and we're moving into our final conversation for today. As we said, while still focusing on health, one of the days that is commemorated in June, actually on June 7th, is World Food Safety Day. And here to tell us all about the initiatives that they have ongoing and where the focus is for this year, we have John Bodden, who is the Principal Public Health Inspector for the Ministry of Health, and he's joined by Lisa Marin, who's a Senior Public Health Inspector at the Ministry of Health. Good morning, and thank you for joining us.
Hi, good morning, Marlene. It's a pleasure for us to be here once again.
Yeah. So this year, World Food Safety Day is being celebrated under the theme, Food Safety, Everyone's Business. Tell us about the importance of having a day to commemorate food safety.
Well, Marlene, what happened is that you know that everybody for survival needs to consume food.
Yeah.
And as such, it's imperative that any food that is consumed is actually safe. So we need to look at the entire continuum of food safety, which starts from the farm to the plate when the person actually eats the food.
Yeah.
However, the Ministry of Health is not the sole responsible authority because we have several competent food safety authority in the country. We also have BAHA, which is one of our key institutions that actually works along with us. But for the Ministry of Health, we specifically are involved when it comes to the direct inspection and monitoring of the facilities and places where food are actually produced. And so we are very interested in knowing what would be the outcomes of these food.
Yeah.
Earlier, some years ago, we started what was called the burden of illness study, whereby we looked at how food was actually affecting the population.
Yeah.
And what we really knew that in terms of the microbes that we were looking at, we had rotavirus seemed to be one of them that was really common.
That's right.
In terms of food. And that was infecting our population in terms of children between the age of 1 to 14. They were mostly affected by that. And we also had the Creole and Mestizo population who were most affected by the foodborne illnesses.
Yeah.
And so those actually gave us quite a background to work on in terms of what do we need to do in terms of food safety. Now, whatever application we do in food safety, it's not for any specific individual, but it's for the community in general. And so we have taken a number of issues into consideration since that time. And probably Lisa can give us a list of some of the things over the last year that we have been working on, because we've actually drafted a food safety plan, and that will commence implementation shortly.
Yeah.
But over the last year, we have been doing a number of things to improve the quality of food that comes to the individuals or to the consumer.
Yeah. Let me just get in there for a moment. I'm assuming everyone has had their breakfast, so I can address this issue. When you say that the main virus that was been detected causing what we know as bad belly, diarrhea, vomiting, upset stomach, it's caused by the rotavirus, and that is basically coming from a chain of people not washing their hands properly, from bathroom to kitchen to consuming. Is that correct?
Yes. You're absolutely correct, Marlene.
Yeah. And this has been a persistent problem for us for many years.
It has been definitely, and this is a chain that we have to break if we want to see improvement in terms of the reduction in terms of foodborne illness in the country. Yeah. What I must say though, that while this was the output of that study, on a normal basis, we don't tend to see large outbreaks like many other countries in terms of food-borne illnesses.
Yeah.
And of course, one of the things that might be the issue is the lack of reporting.
Ah. So when you say foodborne illnesses, that's when you're talking about things like salmonella? Is that what you mean?
Yes, salmonella is one of them, yes.
Okay, and the other one with an L?
uh, listeria.
Listeria.
Yeah. What happened is that, as you mentioned before, Marlene, a lot of people consider it to just be a bad belly, and then sometimes because it's minor, it goes away and people forget about it.
Yeah.
But the reality is that this happens on a daily basis. However, the reporting is not up to the level as we would want it. In fact, even when the person goes to the health facility, they would ask to provide a sample for screening and testing. Very often, we can't get a sample or a specimen from these individuals.
So we don't test enough to know how big the problem is with things like the foodborne illnesses.
Yes, that is one of the issue.
Okay. So looking at food safety, what you do at public health, it's not just the investigation side, but you also do a lot of preventative work. Looking at the context of this pandemic, where we have all been washing our hands like we have never washed our hands before, is this perhaps one of the silver linings that we'll see a reduction in some of the gastrointestinal illnesses that we know are usually rampant around certain times of the year?
Yes, we must have to agree on that, Marlene. It is the silver lining in all these foodborne illnesses and outbreaks.
Okay.
I believe, Marlene, that this is a golden opportunity we have to have modified behavior. And that is what we try to promote in terms of foodborne illnesses, or whenever we do health education in terms of any public health issue, we want to achieve modified behavior. And I think because the seriousness of COVID, it actually will make people change easier. So it's a proactive measure that actually will make people change automatically.
So you've been working, and now your role has expanded to work with the vendors, especially the street vendors, since they have been allowed to open, in how they can properly manage or reduce the risks, I could say, of spreading things like COVID-19. What has that been like? We were joking that you'd never get a chance to talk to all the tacos vendors because there's so many. But what is the message, and what are the protocols that we should expect?
Okay, the message for us is that we need to ensure whatever we do, that we prevent the spread of COVID among the population. One of the things I must say, Marlene, is that it has not been proven that COVID can be transmitted through food. But the other activities that comes along with providing food can actually do it. So we are saying that once you're providing food, there must be consideration that we use public health precaution for us to prevent COVID transmission when selling food. And so the basic issues like what we've been talking about, social distancing or physical distance from individuals, is important. The issue of hygiene is important. The washing of hands is important, because in most occasions, if you read the literature that has come out in reference to the transmission of COVID, it had to be somewhere and somebody had to pick it up and take it to another individual. It cannot move on its own. So it means simply that somebody did not do something right at that time when they were interacting with others. And as such, we had to look at the whole structure in which they offer food to the consumer and do a modified change. So it's not completely new what we're doing, but there are some modified changes that we have requested as a result of COVID.
Like masks, they should definitely have that. It's mandated anyway. Things like increased hand washing, is that also part of what you expect, we should expect to see at our favorite street vendors?
Yes, it is. And again, this is an intervention that has brought some changes, and we see the ingenuity in individuals, whereby in terms of the designs of the wash hand stations, there are myriad on the market at the moment. So we're even in terms of readjustments of the stalls themselves. And some people started to do this even before we visited them, because we already had started the prompting that this will be the new changes that we will expect shortly.
You know what's interesting? Because food handlers have to go through a certification program with you guys. And I know they learned long before COVID the extended process of how to wash your hands. So they're well equipped to be able to do it properly. It's just a matter of making sure it's enforced.
Yes, it is. And I think, Marlene, you could recall that it was in last year when we did that documentary in terms of the proper washing of hands.
Yeah.
While it was geared to the general public and prevention of diseases, now it's been looked at more from the perspective of the food handler and how they can prevent the transmission of COVID to their customers.
Yeah.
So it is, and since that time, when we did the launch, it has become a routine part of the procedures in terms of doing food handling by the vendors.
Yeah. And looking at this year, so you have an expanded role to talk about COVID-19, but there are a number of other things that are still crucial to food safety. Talk to me about what you're focusing on this year.
Well, this year, we have a number of initiatives that we're working on. One of them, again, as we had mentioned, is the restaurant certification system.
Mm-hmm.
That is basically categorizing the restaurants based on the quality of experience that will be in there, which is actually attached to the level of health standard that is available at the restaurant. Mm-hmm. So there is a four-tier grading system, and based on that, it can add some leverage to the particular business in terms of their promotion. In terms of, it's just like the hotels. You have the five-star hotel, you have a 3-star. It depends on where you want to be in the industry, and it actually affords them some level of competition in terms of the level of service they want to provide to their consumer.
Yeah. I guess it gives people who've worked very hard on maintaining all the top standards a moment to be able to enjoy the acknowledgement of it.
Yes, and of course that there's a financial remuneration for that, because once you're known to have a certain standard, you can actually demand a certain price for your items as well. So yeah, that will be a significant benefit to all these facilities or these restaurant establishments.
Yeah. So what else? I mean, we're also looking at other threats at this time. When we look at the temperature, the heat that we're facing, there are always food safety risks there. And of course, we got our first floods that took place recently. And I know that's also an area of public health that you guys work on as well. So there are a lot of risks to mitigate all at once.
Yes, definitely we have risks. And during this hurricane season, it will be an additional risk that we have to focus on, because food safety is very important, especially when you do not have availability of power. Food must be kept either hot or cold, and if you break that cycle, then there's a perfect opportunity for individuals to become ill. And so whatever measure you can put in place will only be a temporary measure, because you cannot sustain that for a prolonged time without the presence of power in our communities. So it's important, again, for people to reflect on their food stock that they have at home. And of course, we tend to recommend that the type of foods that we should be using should be foods that does not really require to have temperature associated with it. So that would prevent a lot of food spoilage and foodborne illness to occur within any population.
All right, great. Any final message to the public as we wrap up this segment?
Well, what we want to remind the public is that food safety is important, and of course, it's everybody's business. While the Ministry of Health remains engaged with the vendors or the food establishment, everybody has a role to play in this society in terms of ensuring the safety of people while consuming food. And so even if we're in the public domain and they see anything that might not be consistent with the public health measures or standards, we ask them to make that report to public health that we can investigate and ensure that we can realign or streamline their practices with what is expected. The ultimate goal for the ministry is to ensure that we do not have outbreaks or we do not have foodborne illnesses circulating in our population, because having that can mean a burden on the government. It can have a burden, a family burden, as well as it can have a personal burden for them in terms of the illness that they will succumb to eventually in some cases. So we want people to remember that it is everybody's business.
That's right.
And we must be very careful in terms of what we do whenever we're selling food.
That's right. Well, thank you so much for reminding us of the importance of this message, and we do appreciate it. How do people get in touch with public health if they do want to file any report?
We do have a list of public health offices throughout the country,
Okay.
And they can find that in the green pages of the telephone book. And of course, those people can respond to the different issues that may be confronting our communities.
All right. Thank you very much, John and Lisa.
Thank you too, Marlene. It's a pleasure.
All right. And with that, we're going to go ahead and take our last break, I should say, and be back in a few.